They're finishing purpose charity. Next week we'll go on to testing God. So, Shayla Yud Beis on the bottom right. Can you give money to support wicked people? So, Reb Shlomo Zalman said, Russia is just a Russia because, it's the one from, sorry. The Russia is a Russia because he's hungry. In other words, he eats McDonald's because he's hungry. So then, that's that you can still give him money. But it was a Russia.
To buy McDonald's or
no.
other things?
General. But Rosh Lahachis, it's also. But today he says most of the people are Tinoka Shenishbu. In other words, they don't know any better. And they're so now considered Lahachis. Let's say something they lower kas v'sina l'shomrei Torah. You have to give them in order not to provoke anger and hatred to Shomrei Torah. It's actually a very well-known tshuva from Shlomo Zalman in Mincha Shlema. He says, what happens if you have somebody you're hosting and you're giving him something to eat and he's not from, he's not going to make a bracha. And he'll be insulted if you tell him to make a bracha. So should you not give him, but if he'll also be insulted if you don't give him what to eat, right? It's not proper hosting. So they say, and I don't think this is necessarily true, but they say the Chazon Ish had this problem when Ben Gurion came to visit him. Because Ben Gurion, he knew he wasn't going to make a bracha, and he didn't want to tell him to make a bracha because Ben Gurion might leave in a huff and a puff. So what the Chazon Ish is supposed to have done, he's supposed to set fruit on the table, but just out of arm's reach of Ben Gurion. And that he knew Ben Gurion is not going to ask to pass the fruit. Right, the fruit is in front of him, he might take, but he's not going to ask for the fruit to pass. So therefore, that's how he got out of the issue. Reb Shlomo Zalman says, you're over lifnei iver anchil Hashem if you don't give him what to eat, which is worse than lifnei iver of him not making a bracha. So therefore, Reb Shlomo Zalman says, and this that if somebody comes, you have to act like a polite host, even if it means that he's not going to make a bracha as a result. So it's a logical psak, but I would never have said that because I don't have the guts to say it. Shlomo Zalman held, obviously, that most people nowadays are Tinoka Shenishbu, not everybody. The Chazon Ish evidently held something similar because he says there's no true apikoros b'zman hazeh. The type of apikoros used to entice them to go down into a hole and then drew up the ladder after him. We don't have that kind of apikoros. But on the other hand, there's a Rabbi Yoshev held, not like that. Rabbi Yoshev held that they're not Tinoka Shenishbu. The people live in Israel today, they should know better, and therefore it would be a big problem. For example, to have them join a minyan, because according to Rabbi Yoshev, they're sinners, right? They're mumorim lahachis, because they should know better. Yeah.
What would Rabbi Yosef hold by such people if they're no filibor?
Well, he probably would say, if you get away with that, leave them there. But probably can't get away with it today. But anyway,
you have people that are lahachis, but you have even them that aren't from that are still sympathetic.
Sure. Most non-frum Jews are sympathetic, and if not to religious people, at least to religion. Yes, but we're talking about a small minority. But in any event, I got a psak once from Rabbanan Soloveitchik that as long as somebody believes in God, and when he makes a bracha or he davens, he's davening to God, you can be part. You can include him in a minyan. So if you have Mechalei Shabbos, but they believe that davening the Kodesh Baruch Hu, so then you can have them join the minyan. But Yoshi doesn't hold that way.
So, Lamaisa, if you need a minyan, and you ask, it's like you have one of your non-from relatives there, and you know what, based on what he said before, he's a hardcore atheist. You can't make the story from minyan.
Not according to Rabbi Yoshi. But according to Shlomo Zalman, you could. If he's, definitely he's going to get insulted, you're going to be a mitzvah of him. But even if he's not getting insulted, he's still Teinok Shenishba as long as he believes in God. He's not an atheist. Mamish. So then you'll be able to do mitzvah of him. Okay, let's go on to the next tshuva. So he says, Can you give charity to non-Orthodox institutions? One word answer. This is almost like it sounds like Chaim Kanievsky. Tshuva, lo. You can't give to non-Orthodox organizations. Now, this is a bit of a touchy thing, at least in America, with people giving money to federations. Because federations, especially out of town, they support from a community. So therefore, if you don't give them, it's going to create a big Chil Hashem. So, but a federation is not a from organization. A lot of them have their facilities open on Shabbos. Nowadays, they all support LGBTQ stuff. So therefore, can you give them money? So I think that as long as they're also supporting the from community, you're probably allowed to give them money. But to give them money, and if they're not to a conservative synagogue or reforms temple, where they're not using people which are not going to use the money for proper purposes, that you wouldn't be allowed to do. Okay, but so chavshim means literally not from, but I think it depends on the situation. Sheilu Yudalit. Apparent, yeah.
Is he talking about specifically Jewish institutions that are not from? What about a Goyish institution that has a good cause?
Right. So he said before on the bottom, the top left, general charities, you're allowed to. Okay. So yes. So you say that a person doesn't have to support his children once they hit the age of 6. Okay, so can I feed my children above the age of 6 from Ma'aser money? It's tzedakah. I don't have to feed them, right? They should go out and beg on the streets. It's very charitable of me to feed my kids. So he use Ma'aser money for that. So he says, more people say that you can use Ma'aser money for that than that you can't use money for that. In other words, most sources hold that that's considered to be Ma'aser. It says somebody who does tzedakah all the time. That's somebody who sustains his older children. This is like what's the word? A droll comment. He said, yeah, but it also says, of course, Aaron Kohen shouldn't come all the time to the Kodesh Kodashim. The way Chavetz Chaim spun it is with tzedakah shall kol ace, with this tzedakah of the kol ace, shall vol kodesh. You can't come to kodesh. In other words, this is too big a loophole. Yeah, the loophole exists, but it's not ethically a pure loophole. So he says you should not count it towards your tzedakah money. Okay, he says it's mutter, but you shouldn't do it. And then he says, "This is a big bummer. If the law requires you to support your children over the age of 6, so then it's not tzedakah. You're fulfilling your obligation to the government, so you can't use Ma'aser money for it. I don't know what the law is in America. Do you have to sustain your kids over the age of 6, or you can kick them out in the street?
18.
Till 18? Okay, so then none of that would count. Okay?
Supporting an older kid over 18 does count, or?
Yeah. But again, they say that you shouldn't count it. Saying it's a loophole one should not utilize. By the way, loopholes are okay in Benan Makams. Any loophole you can use in Benan Makam, you can use in Benan Makam, you can use. But Benan Mechavero, loopholes are frowned upon. That's basically what he's saying here. Yeah, if this is a question of Benan Makam, fine, but the tzedakah money you're giving to support your kids, you're not going to give them to something else. That's Benan Mechavero.
What about supporting married kids who are learning? Or even single older kids who are learning?
That for sure can be considered tzedakah, because at that point, most people don't support them anymore. We're talking about a case where most people still support, even if they are, the government doesn't require it. But if you're supporting your kids after they got married, which at least in the good old days people didn't do, so then that would certainly be considered to be tzedakah, Ma'aser money.
What about older, not older, but let's say mixed marriage age? People could technically move out, go to college, get a job, but you're paying them the same.
I would go by the general population. I think most people support their kids till after they finish college.
But Yeah, someone's not going to college, or he's delaying going to college, but he's staying and learning.
Okay, so then you figure it out. In other words, 22. Whatever the standard age will be. Okay. Obligation to communal institution. Shayla says above. Truma should keep it a level of Seisa Beis HaKnesses. Or a mikveh. You come to make an Aliyah Shabbos morning. Hey, make a Mishaberach. Right? I mutali frozen in name Ma'aser. Can you use Ma'aser money to pay up your Mishaberach? So he says Tshuva im kacha yadaitim milchatchila mutar. When you got your Aliyah, you said you had in mind that the money should come from your tzedakah money. It's okay. If you didn't have money, yesh machlokes. It's a difference of opinion. So any money which you owe shul, dues or aliyahs and stuff like that, I think it must be.
Make a clip of this and send it out with the membership bill.
Yeah, I think this must be Yekish term. You can tell me if it is. My father used to call it schnuddering. Ever heard the term? Schnuddering? Because it's schnuddering is babur shenodar litztaka. So that is called schnuddering, right? It's making a nether to tzedakah. Okay, so the Sheit Hazayin. Mishael Kesef knows Chepsei Mitzvah, going Arba meaning. Oh, tefillin. Haim Eshalik knows somebody to make Ma'aser. The personal mitzvahs. Can you buy them from Ma'aser money? To buy somebody else tefillin, you could use Ma'aser money. But rather to buy yourself tefillin. Tshuva Arba meaning, Im Efshar Yikach Matana Amnas La'achzir Me'acher. Who says you have to spend your money on that, right? Borrow it. You don't buy own a lulav and esrog. You can borrow it, right? B'Efshar, and it's not possible. B'chein tefillin shuani, also tefillin if he's poor, mutter, then you're allowed to use your money for it. You know, it's a famous story about Talmud came to Reb Chaim in Bolozhin and said, "My father wants you to come home for Ben Azmanim, but the halacha is kibbut avayim is mishal of. He has to pay for my kibbut avayim. So that's the case. If he sent me a train if he doesn't send me a train ticket, I don't have to go, right?" So Reb Chaim said, "You're right. You don't have to go by train. You have to walk." So there's a similar idea. In other words, okay, if you can do it without spending money, don't say I'm going to buy an expensive esrog because I use my Ma'aser money for that. No, get a minimal esrog, or you could get or borrow it and use the Ma'aser money for the poor people.
What about buying somebody else a lulav in esrog?
Yeah, no. So it depends. If it's something where they couldn't afford on their own, so then you can do it for them. Yeah.
What can you tell them to borrow?
What?
What can you tell them to borrow?
So Reb Shlomo Zalman says, Yenem's Gashmius is my Ruchnius. In other words, that he should feel good is
It's same thing as buying him a meal.
I can't make myself feel good.
So it'd be the same thing as buying him a nice jacket or a nice shirt.
Yeah, right.
Not because of the mitzvah should buy it, but just he'll feel better because he has.
The Gemara says that if you have a guy who used to be rich and he had horses running in front of him and servants running in front of him, so he gets horses and servants, right? So so whatever makes a person feel good is part and parcel of that tzedakah. But it's interesting because in essence we're Litvaks, right? So since we're Litvaks, we don't have to make ourselves happy. There's no mitzvah for us to be happy. There's only mitzvah.
So could each pay for someone else a lulav and esrog with their tzedakah?
Well, it's very similar to the Sudas Purim, that the Mechaf is Sudas Hadada, yeah.
No, the two poor people each pay for each.
Yeah.
I buy you a little if you buy me a little.
What?
I'm saying two aniyim. I buy you a little if you buy me a little.
Yeah, it's possible. Again, you have to be sincere about it. Okay.
If they're really a niyim, do they need to on the Ma'aser
What?
in the first place?
What?
If there's such a niyim that
They're Chayav Ma'aser, right? Yeah. Sheila Yudzayin, Chelik Shel Schar Limud, the part of your tuition that Shel Yilad Huavur Yiladim Achem Sheim Mechol Mishalem, which is for other kids who can't pay, and Chelik Zeh Yuchal L'Shalem Midmei Ma'aser. One word answer again. Cain. So I don't know. We talked about this. How you reckon it? It's not clear how exactly you reckon it, but what you're paying in full tuition, which covers other kids' scholarships, that's Ma'aser money.
Can you assume that that donating money to a school is going to be used for these purposes?
Yes, but somebody goes to pay your tuition. Question: what amount is that?
Right.
Okay. Sheil Yudches. Haim mutar says avur chinuch shel yonim afil limud echol or limud muktzah. Can you? And this is very similar to what you said a few moments ago. Can I pay for a poor person to take a course, to get a trade, to get a craft from my Ma'aser money? Tshuva osa chelik shiazor l'ani lilmod Torah only sparnes ukavod. Either one, either Torah or get a parnasa. Havi b'chlad tzedakah. It's tzedakah. Afilu limud shvar b'harbe shanim. If it's going to take many years for him to acquire this skill, like pay for a poor person to go to medical school or to law school, right? That is a form of a tzedakah. Which is an interesting idea. In other words, don't pay for a profession which is going to be bad for him, right? Or is ended up being Mechal Shabbos or dishonest or something of that sort.
Does the Rambam say that this is actually like the highest form of tzedakah, like helping a person get on their feet, right?
You share your test.
Teach them how to fish.
Yeah.
If I'm a loan, which I loaned to somebody, can I reimburse myself for Ma'aser money? Right? I loan money to a poor, presumably to a poor person, right? And now I'd say, okay, I won't collect on the debt. I'll take it off my Ma'aser money. So he says, Tshuva, Rakim Ba'al Chovu Ani, V'yavshalik Vosmen Bedin, only if the borrower is poor, and you could have collected from him. What's in that difference? The fascinating parenthesis here. In Pashat Esarego, if the debtor declared bankruptcy, also Kachmidi Ma'aser can replace what you're owed from Ma'aser money, because then he wouldn't be paying you back.
Pashat Esarego is a lesson of bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Din Betzin or din like secular?
Secular.
It's interesting.
There's no bankruptcy in Beis Din. It's a secular concept.
Right. So, but in Milval, there's no proof of it. That means that you can't collect it.
No. I mean, you could still collect the Milval Peh.
Not in secular court. The guy could be saying that you might have to live.
Okay, I get it. If you did it without Adim, then we're supposed to do Milval Peh with Adim. If you did it without Adim, then... What?
Is the court going to take two people as aid them?
No, but then you go to Beis Din. It's either Beis Din or court. So if you can collect it and you don't collect it, then you can consider it as Ma'aser money. Not if you couldn't collect it. Okay.
Handshake agreements have a certain legal standing.
What agreements?
A handshake agreement.
Handshake. Okay.
Depends where you are.
So I don't.
Verbal contracts are binding. You can't cost it.
I don't know why this is very not. This is not.
What if it can't be collected in court? But the guy you might just I owe you and I can't pay you right now. He's not denying it. He just said I don't.
Right. That's considered that you can collect it.
Even if there's no proof to it. There's no aid them.
Yeah. There's a das baldin. It's enough. Yeah. Sheila Chaf. אם מותר יהודי בחוץ לארץ לתרום ממעשר עבור מקביס המוכרס למדינת ישראל. The UJA, or in Chicago used to call it the JUF. So the can count giving money to the UJA as the United Jewish Appeal as being money which is tzedakah money. So he says it's a mitzvah gedola. But it's not pure tzedakah. He shouldn't always ma'aser to this purpose. And that he said that previously by giving money to cancer funds or March of Dimes or something like that, it's a good cause. It's ma'aser money, but it should not be highest on your list of priorities because it's not pure tzedakah. Because the money's not going just for poor people. So therefore, it's important to do, but a lesser priority. The next one is very cute. Sheil Chafaf, Yehudi mechutz la'aretz, sherotz lebaker ba'aretz, and mutar l'shalim esotzosa midmei maaser. I want to take a trip to Israel. Okay, this is my Ma'aser money to pay for me to take a trip to Israel. It's a good question. So he says, Imatros lalos arza, if you have in mind to make aliyah, or chapes drachim lalos, or to look for ways to make aliyah, mutar. In other words, this is what they used to call it, maybe still called a pilot trip, right? To check out whether you can be able to move or not be able to move. So then it's okay. Im if it's not possible for him to go any other way. But you can't use Ma'aser money to pay for food you would have eaten at home, or for lodgings you would have had at home, because that's that anyway is an expense you would have had. So expense you would have had anyway, you can't use Ma'aser money for that. Also, he doesn't say anything about business class here. But Pashas, even if you fly business class, you can only take off for economy class.
Yeah, so if I would have eaten eggs at home and macaroni, and now I'm on vacation, I'm eating a steak dinner.
But so the steak dinner has to be, he doesn't say this, but I think the steak dinner has to be l'shem checking out the steak in Eretz Yisrael, if it's good for you to move there or not good for you there. In other words, it has to be somehow related to the trip. So the ima biko rak l'tanugol l'bakeret so krovim asur. But if it's only for pleasure trip or to go visit relatives, it's asur. But if a guy is going to learn in Israel, so then the money for the flight also is part of Meiser money, because that's how he's getting there in order to learn. What he's trying to conclude is that, as Chazal says, every 4 hours you walk in Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah, right? So that type of mitzvah is not the type of mitzvah for which you can deduct Meiser money. Okay, so you can't pay for your expenses. You want to go on a tiyul in Eretz Yisrael, go 4 amos, right? That's not that you can't deduct it from Meiser money. Okay, Gemach Sheilach Habeis Ihem Mutar L'Havos Aniyim B'Dmei Meiser. So it's a fascinating thing. I would have said not, because you're getting the money back. But evidently, I would be wrong, because Reb Shlomo Zalman says, it's a great purpose to make a gemach with the money from Meiser money. Now, obviously, you ever take the money back from the gemach, so then you have to compensate Meiser, because it's no longer Meiser money.
It goes back to Meiser.
What?
When it comes back, it goes back to Meiser.
Well, no, I'm saying if you take it out of the gemach permanently.
Then it's still Meiser money.
It's not Meiser money. What do you mean? If I set up a gemach, I could put money in a gemach to loan out to people, but don't plan on leaving there forever, right? Like eventually, I'll take it back after running the gemach for a year or two. Assuming it's mutter to take it back, right? So then, obviously, at that point, it's not Meiser money anymore.
So you put it in as Meiser money, you take it out, it's not Meiser.
Yeah, you have to leave it there in order for you Meiser money.
Right, so the amount that you took out, you would still owe that amount of money.
It's
as
like
Meiser.
it's having a
You
tzedakah.
can't launder your Meiser money through that.
I realize that's where you were trying to get at.
Yeah.
Maybe the Jews would have figured that out long ago.
So the Chavetz Chaim Matzil Akim Keren Havos Me'achelek Shel Meiser Shalom. Chavetz Chaim actually suggested to make a gemach from at least part of your Meiser, which is it's a wonderful thing, a gemach, because obviously it help out a lot of people.
And this is for loans. People who want to take out loans.
Yeah. Now they might be taking out he says for poor people, right? If it's a gemach which people are using to buy new cars, right? Then that's I shouldn't say some new cars you have to buy, but it's gemach in order to buy a Rolls Royce. So then that's not going to be Meiser money. Yeah.
A person is a guarantor for a loan. Well, if it doesn't pay back, can you use the Meiser money to pay out?
No, because he's obligated. If he obligated himself to be an Orev, he could have stipulated at the beginning. He could have stipulated, I'm only becoming Orev if I can use Meiser money for it. But if he didn't stipulate, so it's an obligation to look upon himself, he can't do it for Meiser money. Okay?
So I understand the money in the gemach. If somebody needs to borrow it, that can come from Meiser. But what about, like, say, these table, chair gemachs, like that sort of thing? Can that?
So the money you spent on the chair is the Meiser money.
So that's still considered.
Yeah, sure.
Meiser.
Okay. Can't assume you're not going to eventually take the chair back and use it for your personal use. If it wears out, I think if it wears out and it's no longer suitable
Serve
to,
this purpose as Meiser.
right, then you don't have to deduct from your Meiser.
This is a little bit of a technical question, but if I start like a table and chair gemach, can I base the amount of Meiser I'm giving on each time it's being used and how
No.
much I would rent that out for?
No,
No.
because you're not. If you were a professional chair rental, and you allocate a certain amount of your chairs for gemach, right? Then you'd be allowed to do it every time, because you're renting out chairs is
my
worth
job,
money.
right,
That's
yeah.
your job. But if it's not your job, then you wouldn't be able to do it. Okay, finally for tonight, who is poor? Now that people get welfare. Mini krani, who's called poor? And how does the how much a poor person have to give to tzedakah himself? So tshuva komi sheino yicholos parnes hu bnei beso min hamaskores shelo nikra ani. Definition of poor person, once upon a time, because Chazal said the definition was somebody who had 200 zuz. You had 200 zuz, you're not an ani. If you had 199 zuz, you're an ani. But it's not realistic nowadays, right? Because 200 zuz it's a few $1,000s, and it won't go far nowadays. So the definition of an ani is somebody whose parnasa doesn't cover his expenses. Even though he has a salary, he has a job, but he's not making enough to make ends meet. So that, not making enough ends meet, that automatically qualifies him as an ani, and he's allowed to take tzedakah, you're allowed to give him tzedakah.
That would vary depending on a lot of factors.
Yeah, it does, yes.
How do you make the ends meet?
Depends if you're making
Depends what you call supporting a family.
Right. So again, buying a Jaguar is not making ends meet, right? Having filet mignon is not making ends meet, right? Everything goes by. It's hard to gauge these things, but it goes by the normal lifestyle in the place where you live. So it's going to be different Kiryas Yoel than it's going to be in Muncie.
So it could be getting 2 cars instead of having 1 car.
Right. After I was in Kiryas Yoel yesterday to look at for arts for visit the yeshiva there, so they're building all over Kiryas Yoel. It's crazy. So then the tall buildings, like 5-6 stories. I asked the guy who was taking me around, do they have elevators? He said, no, they don't have elevators. So I said, so who buys on the top floor? Because eventually you're going to be old and decrepit, or you're going to have 10 kids. How are you going to schlep to the top floor? So he says that somebody once went to the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe, should we buy on the top floor? He said, no. Because what are you going to do eventually when you're old and worn out? So the guy asked the Rebbe, so who buys the top floor? So the Rebbe said, the people don't ask me. So
You're going to say all the top floors are going to be in.
So, what if you live in a place where the average person has 3 or 4 kids, and one person decides to have 13 kids when they can't afford it? But in that makom, so that's like if a person has kids. Let's say in a family that a person makes a certain amount, and he knows by constantly having kids and kids, he can't afford it, but he keeps on doing it anyway. Is it Tzibor obligated to support it?
I know obligated, but it's a mitzvah.
It's a mitzvah.
Yeah.
Even though he knows by having more kids, he can't do it.
Right.
Is that in
I know that's the other question. Do you keep having kids or do you not? That's a whole other.
Yeah, it's a whole question whether about limiting the amount of children you have. That's true, but if the person decides to have all these children, it's still tzedakah to give them the money.
We can't. So we shouldn't say to him,
right?
Visit
so nobody should ever say that. Yeah.
Right.
Yes. I once when I was in Chicago, I only recently. I don't know if I said this here. Only since we got a Yerusha from when my father-in-law Reb Shlomo died, are my expenses less than my income every year. For 30 some odd years of marriage, right? Every year my expenses were more than my income. Now changed in the last couple of years. So when I was in Chicago, so obviously we needed scholarship money. So they said we bought a house. So they sent us to the scholarship committee. Who gave you the right to buy a house? We should have continued renting. We have to suffer because you decided to buy a house. So the answer is yes. They have to suffer because that's a normal way of living. People buy houses, but they weren't having it. Okay, so that's why people in tuition committees will probably burn. Okay, he doesn't have a constant salary. Karen, he's got like his own personal endowment, right? He has investments. But the income investments are insufficient to support him, right? Dargasa parnasa, and this is what we just said. The level of parnasa tluya b'sviva bahugar v'kama hayarogil, right? It has to do with the place where he lives and how much he's accustomed. So it's not, I don't know, it's not like this necessarily Muncie, but in Chicago, the corner lots are always bigger houses. And so you don't go by a corner lot house. You go by a house in the middle of the street, right? So that's, but the normal house, and so on and so forth. A normal car, and so on and so forth. Toyota Corolla, I assume, would be fine. Camry, maybe even. But those are things which determine what, and it's hard. Yeah, it's not easy to make this determination.
Not a Tesla.
Not a Tesla, no. Although they say with the tax credit, sometimes comes out cheaper, but I don't believe that.
It could, depending on the tax bracket you're in. It could.
Okay. So he says, Ani batzmo lo yitain pachas mishlisha shekel l'shona. That's extremely little. Shlisha shekel l'shona, it's less than the machzis shekel you give on a Purim, Purim. So if you give, at least a third of a shekel, everybody's supposed to give a year to tzedakah. And we'll stop here for tonight.